Please welcome to the stage, Arjan Spies.
So, is this on? Yes, it's on. So, who's the one that can imitate my voice? Who's that one? Oh, excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, I'm very glad to be here. It was a very long preparation time for me. That was since Tuesday, so that's excellent. I love it, but hey, it's my story. So let's get to it. So the team actually gave it a thought, from dream to reality with a few nightmares in between. And I can tell you, it's been quite a lot of nightmares to get from there. So let me start by putting out this. You see Fabry. Let me explain you a little bit more about Fabry when we move on, because probably nobody, well, except a couple who know me, but know what Fabry does. Let's go to that in a minute. So, Guns N' Roses. Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games. We got everything you want, honey. We know the names. We are the people that can find whatever you may need. I think that's recruitment today. So we got a jungle of technology. We got a jungle of data. We got a jungle of candidates, labor markets, that kind of stuff, and we all try to fish in some of the same ponds and different ponds at the same time without having the right bait, to be honest. So this is Fabry. We sell bolts and nuts. As we always say, we keep the world together. Look around you. If the bolts were gone, this wouldn't be standing, right? And we also say bolts and nuts are like toilet paper. It becomes a problem when it's not there. So if you think about some of our clients, ASML, John Deere, Tesla, potentially not the best example, but they rely on us on a day-to-day basis for their bolts, nuts, screws, washers. And we do that with 80,000 unique order lines a day. So think about Bol, think about Wekamp, think about Zalando, slightly bigger, but hey. So we're a technical wholesaler. We don't produce anything, we don't make anything. So we had Hung and Lorraine, we heard them talk about what do you do with technology, what do you do with customer journeys, candidate journeys, that kind of stuff. And this is basically where we're at. Right? That's a digital highway, and we want to make sure that our potential candidates or our great hires or our talented people take the right exit to your job board or your job site or your company. Right? That's what we're trying to do. That's why we all have career sites. And we talked about candidate journey, customer journey, etc., that kind of stuff. This is the actual candidate journey. This is the actual customer journey, right? A lot of detours, a lot of stuff happening, crappy job apps, crappy engagement, and hey, at the end of the day, they end up at our job site, and we might say, poor quality. We make great quality. So at Fabry, we make a clear distinction between we don't need top-notch quality or talent for everything. We also need basic labor. So make a distinction between that. So the question has been asked. I was sitting in the back of the room, so I couldn't see every hand. Who's in recruitment? Everybody, right? Who understands fully the talent pools you got installed in your organizations? Your best performers versus your worst performers, your install talent pool per business unit, per that kind of stuff. Who knows that? Oh, okay. Isn't very helpful for my talk. Good. So coming from a supply chain background, having nothing to do with recruitment up until 3.5 years ago, you can imagine where I'm going at with my talk. It's all about process excellence. And how do you manage a supply chain? Basically, you get a box from A to B. And in between, a lot of things go wrong. Because that's what our customers get. They get two things. One is an invoice, and one is a box with bolts and nuts. The invoice doesn't make them happy, the box makes them happy. Because we're the most expensive fastener provider in the world. We're also number 5 as the largest fastener provider in the world. So we know our supply chain quite well after 70 years. The company was founded in 1947. It resides in Tilburg. Tilburg. Excellent. Supply chain hotspot of Europe. And we hire 50 warehouse workers, supply chain analysts annually. So let me talk to you a little bit about the volume. You might not be impressed with the volume we hire. We hire roughly 200, 300 people a year. The excellent news is we do that without any recruiter. We don't have recruiters. It's fully embedded in the line. It's fully embedded with the HRBPs. So what do you do then, Arjan, as head of selling jobs? I give them a menu card. And I make sure that all of those candidates we see, which if it's labor or when it's talent, that they know how to take the right exit without going through all the difficulties of detours and not getting pinged upon, the messaging. So when you talk about technology, where Hung talked about, technology doesn't provide you with a solution. It's your problem which decides what technology you pick. It's as simple as that. But before you pick a technology or whatever you want to use, you've got to understand this. How does it all look like when you track and trace certain items? So when we're on the lookout for talent, and we're going to be going fishing in the same pond, what do you know about everybody who visits your A, company site, B, your career site? Who fully understands that? And be honest, if you know there's nothing wrong, when I started 3 years ago, I didn't know anything about this. So then you don't know who is actually following you, or how long they stay with you, or what do they look at? What content do they look at? If you look at the analytics behind it, you don't know anything about how are they being referred to your jobs, job site or company site. You don't know anything about what's the age grouping of that audience. Because if that's between 40 and 60 and you only want to hire young people, yeah, we see 100K plus visitors a month. Yeah, but if they're all above 60, it's not the right audience, right? So how do we go about not having any clue about this whatsoever? Let me go one step back, that's easier. Fabry is a part of Grainger. Grainger is North America's largest provider of MRO goods, MRO, maintenance, repair operations. They have 1 million products out of stock. 25,000 people working there, $14 billion US revenue. 60% of their revenue goes via online technology. So when I thought, hey, we can't have any recruiter, because we hired 300 people in 11 countries. So 300 is nice volume, but when you divide it amongst 11 countries, there's no volume whatsoever. So it doesn't justify a recruiter. It doesn't justify all the technology needed, which a recruiter might need, because then your cost per hire or qualified candidate becomes awfully expensive. And since we lean heavily on operational excellence, my CFO was not very in favor of hiring 11 recruiters and providing technology. So we had to look at it differently. So I spent 2 weeks with the US e-commerce team, and I spent 1 week in Japan with our largest online provider in Japan. Like, how do you sell a hammer online? For God's sake, it's a hammer, right? The problem with a hammer is you got to work with it, so nobody's actually interested in the hammer. But still they manage to sell for a lot of money hammers online. So what do you measure? How do you look at it? What do you track? What kind of data do you look at? So we started very simplistically 3.5 years ago. Oh yeah, and you know I got the funding for all of this? That's a great story. I asked our CEO in the US, can you apply on our career site? He says, yeah, sure, I can, because he was visiting us. I said, can you do that overnight because you're going to be here tomorrow as well? He says, Arjan, it's only in Dutch. Yeah, great, right? We operate in 11 countries. Hungary, Slovak, Czech, Poland, France, Spain, Portugal. And he was Spanish by nature. Arjan, I cannot understand Dutch. I said, yeah, that's our problem. We're a European organization and we have one site and one language. He says, how much do you need to fix that? I said, well, I don't know yet, but roughly around 50K. I thought that should be enough. He says, well, let's start with 30. I'm like, crap, 30. But hey, eventually we got it. It's not the best website, to be honest. If you look at it today, you know, knowing what I know now, I'm like, how could we ever build that? So the next one is launched in January. The cool part is 60% of the content of that is going to be gone. The processes are going to be gone. But there's way more stuff added based on what I'm trying to explain a view of my story. So this is what we start to measure when we had our new site. We started measuring visitors. We started measuring unique visitors, right? We started to measure bounce rates, exit rates, and page views. But then we went into 2017, and there we started measuring impressions, click-through rates. We started to measure time decay, touch point, channel grouping, all that kind of stuff. And eventually I will come to the effect of all of this later on, because it's a great story about what's happened. But then we started to measuring much more, right? Operating systems, country, city presence, keywords, patterns, qualified candidates, in-market segments, visual, heat spots, language, which all of that knowledge I didn't have, but I got a bunch of people who are actually really good at this. So I tap into my e-commerce team and said, can we do more? Can we measure more? So what's coming for 2019? Hiring velocity. Anybody heard of hiring velocity, measuring it? Yeah? Yeah, Renee, yeah, hiring velocity. Hiring velocity is awesome. If you see patterns, we have 3 years data on hiring velocity. You can be on the front end of your problem. Hiring velocity, when something exists, versus when do you fill it. And if you get that, because what we see in most companies is that you got a lot of openings in the beginning and we fill a lot of it at the end. Meaning that you're unstaffed for like 3/4 of the year. Now tell that to a business leader, you're not meeting your goals. Yeah, but I'm 3/4 of a year, I'm unstaffed. So how do you get that up front with all of this kind of data? Where is my target audience? I know, 20 of those roles will be coming up in 20 days or 20 months from now. Where do you start to engage with your audience to make sure that when you finally pop up that vacancy, you've got all of these followers already? And they've got these job alerts, very simple thing everybody uses. Nobody looks at it, right? So, simple story. What can happen here? Average visits over 3 years' time, unique average visits per month, and applicants in total. Starts with minor things. With all of that measurements, you start to improve what you're doing online. So when I started out, we had 60,000 or 6,000 average visits per month. But then you start to target, retarget, you start to engage with your audience based on your data, and then you see that growing. Now, we talked a lot about nightmares, or at least it was in the header. Can you imagine 2016, you're telling to a bunch of leaders on stage like as of today, so we're not going to be using any agencies anymore. Because we got this new cool thing, which is called a career site, and that should drive traffic and drive quality applicants. And then you got your first 20 vacancies, and you go, hey, we got one applicant. And then you have to tell the business, well, you only got one vacancy, right? So you only have to have one individual. Yeah, but he's not qualified. Yeah, that makes it a little bit more difficult. And then you got your serial applicants coming in and all that kind of stuff. And then you still got to tell your Polish boss, which basically I work for everybody, yeah, I know we don't have any applicants, but basically you don't have a call to go back to third-party agencies because that's my decision. Kind of difficult. So then you start to think about what works and what doesn't work. And based on the fact that we measure so much, we know exactly what works. All of those things, you know, conversion rates, higher rates, qualified candidates. So you see a lot of this stuff moving in the right direction, but this comes with a lot of pain and a bunch of A/B testing. So I'm one of the online polluters with, for one role, 5 vacancies. Thanks to Indeed. Excellent. But that gives me a lot of learning. Which job ad works, which job ad doesn't work, which job title doesn't work, what does the vacancy text look like, what's the build-up, all that kind of stuff. Because we measure so much, we know exactly what works. Then we started using visuals. In the beginning, no funding for visuals with our tag and target campaigns. But then you start to trial with visuals, and you know, nowadays we know exactly if we want to hire a sales rep or a key account manager, we got to use these visuals. We got to use that, and we got to use that. So that is what happened. We start a lot of A/B testing on this. And I got 10 minutes left, at least now. But this makes our CFO happy, right? Average cost per hire today, 1,200 euros. Average cost per qualified candidate, that's what we're looking nowadays at. 300 euros per qualified candidates. Now, if you want to, you know, based on Lorraine's story and all that kind of stuff and technology, and you want to invest, this is the business case. I don't have to call my CEO in the US for money. I get it from my own CFO now. Because when I say that I need 50,000 euros to create videos, a new career site, or visuals, or a chat bot, he says, well, the dude might have a point there because cost per hire might go up eventually with 100 euros, but at the end of the day, we lower the cost with 200 euros. So, yeah, 301 vacancies, excellent. 270 hired through an inbound channel without any recruiter. Now the cool part here is, there is also a truth in your ATS. Our hiring managers cannot approve, our leaders cannot approve a vacancy based on the data that we have. We know that probably in 1.5 weeks from now, we have 3 qualified candidates. You need to block 1 day in your calendar from 1.5 weeks now because you're going to be meeting the first candidates. If he doesn't do that or she doesn't do that, they cannot approve the vacancy. So when Hung talked about we got to chase everybody, we don't chase anybody because it's already blocked in their agenda. And they know they're going to be getting 5 or 3 or 6 qualified candidates. Now that's how you use technology for the better, in my view, or our world. Yeah, 98 days, 3 years ago, 56 days average time to start today. I think that's what every hiring manager would like to see. Potentially you guys have like, well, 56 days, you know, I got 30, right? Well, great. But this is our story. And coming from 98 to 56 in 3 years' time without any recruiter, with just investing in technology, analyzing your data, knowing what you're doing actually, and having that to tell to the business, I think it's a pretty cool story. So, what's next? A/B testing. Doing more of the same in different ways so that we get our learnings out of that. Because if we have data, let's look at it. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine. I want to thank you for your attention. I want to thank you for your time. And let's see what kind of questions we have. Alsjeblieft.
Thanks so much, Arjan.
Graag gedaan.
That was great, I think. Shall we have a look at the questions you have posted? You see them here. What's the next set of KPIs? Because you don't have enough yet, right?
No, we got a 35 KPI deck pages. What's the next set of KPIs? Yes, I think that is the thing we're talking about now is what happens after the hire. We've been doing that, let's say, between brackets. We've been monitoring them for 3 years, but the next set is really about how do we get that. We now see that after 8 months, customer service and salespeople in our organization become productive. Now let's see how we can measure that from a KPI perspective and through right onboarding and proper onboarding, and how do we put that in the front of the funnel, what makes those people successful, so that we can sharpen our personas, that we can sharpen our channels, that we can sharpen the way we write job ads to make sure that we get that up.
Right.
That's one.
That's a good one, I think. Are you also going to be responsible for that? Are you going to manage that process?
Yes.
Good answer. I think somebody's interested to work with you. Will there be a time that you will hire recruiters?
I don't think so.
Sorry.
No, we will not hire recruiters. We are going to be having 2 openings for next year. One is a content specialist, and the other one is going to be a data scientist.
Right, so this is a bit connected to what Hong was sharing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Different profiles popping
Yeah.
up in recruitment.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So if anybody is in that area, feel free. What kind of organizational thinking do I need to make radical changes like that?
Ja, hoe zeg je, gooi je kop maar op het hakblok? In het Engels.
Just do it?
Put your balls on the table. And be aware that you're going to be hurting your employer brand. Because you're going to be making bold decisions. You're going to be putting numbers in front of faces. I had it recently with our CEO. He says, Arjan, we have a difficult time filling vacancies in Brno. That's where we have our shared service center. I said, well, that's not entirely true. Well, you know, average time to start is 28 days. He says, yeah, but we got a lot of vacancies. He said, it doesn't tell you anything about hiring. It tells you how do you want to keep them in. On these kind of things, the organizational thinking is every month, all of our leaders, they get a report on their, and they get a wider report on the performance of our vacancies.
Right.
But it starts with how many kilograms of bolts and nuts we had to sell that month to fill our vacancies and to do all the funding for that. That's when you get attention for what you're spending because you're talking their language. And if you, by month, say that, hey, you know, we still need to sell less and less and less and less of kilograms of bolts and nuts, then it becomes like, hey, we're doing the right things. Because at the end of the day, those salespeople don't have to sell anything more because that's pure margin. You're not spending it on anything else.
All right, another question. So you've obviously shared that you're diminishing agency hire.
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
No, as you can see that 90% of those hires go via an inbound channel. We still have 10% where we struggle with, but hey, we're cool with 20%. If we can keep that within 20% radius or bandwidth, we're fine using third-party agencies.
Okay, because the question says to what level do you want to lower it? You're fine now.
I'm fine. Yeah, we can get to a 95%, but then still, you know, one of your business leader comes up, I need this entirely cool individual who we don't know who we need to have kind of skills yet. So you're like, how do we go about? We don't have any data on that. So that's where you typically use a couple of people who are also in this room.
There's about 60 business opportunities standing right here per year.
Yeah.
Amazing there are no specialist recruiters. Is there any resistance on the model from hiring managers? And if so, how do you respond?
We don't get any resistance from hiring managers because, you know, it's a proven thing at this stage. There is an area where we do get a lot of resistance from. Mm-hmm. That's the HR community. Because they are not like, I don't like to hire. and I want to be spending my time on different kind of things. But as I started my dialogue, or at least my talk, is that they fully understand how the talent pools of those teams they support look like. So they know what competencies are missing, and that's what I predominantly communicate to them, that you know what is needed.
Right.
So you should be involved. The only thing is, you know, as Hung said, those people are not really tech savvy. So when we give them a bunch of technology to work with, so it's basically put your arms around them and teach and guide and coach on that matter. So that's the only thing.
Right. So what are the challenges you face to keep you motivated? So which challenges are motivating you?
Well, first of all, still remaining that productivity from that angle that motivates me. The other bit that motivates me, that every day there comes more data in, and there's truth in those numbers. And some of the data, the nightmare was that I've been looking for like 9 months at the wrong data. Now, having 2 screens as a head of selling jobs, looking for 9 months at the wrong data, that is not a very cool thing to have, but the numbers motivate me. What all the online channels tells me, what Indeed is doing. I was one of the few individuals overnight calling Renee and Indeed saying, what have you done? I'm missing 5,000 views overnight. Oh yeah, we invented from a cool thing from Indeed, no offense there for the Indeed people, but we now have the split screen thing. We do not redirect you immediately to your career site. Like, fuck, there goes my audience. But that's like an adjustment which you need to make, because then you need to make sure that they do the preview and then they click through.
Right.
So that motivates me.
Last question. How do you manage cross-functional and cross-border leadership to adopt a specific technology?
Oh crap, that's a difficult one.
Right.
How do you manage cross-functional and cross-border leadership to adopt a specific... as I said, one is taking them by the hand and walking them through it, show them a little bit more detail without sounding too cocky or arrogant, which I have a tendency to. But then there's also the part where I relate very much to our overall strategy. And our overall strategy says, find ways of creating digital interaction with customers, because that's our future. Now, when you start to talk about technology, you can immediately relate to that strategic topic and then say, hey, you know, it's not me who wants to have this, but it's the business that says we need to digitalize. So that's easy.
Thank you, Arjan.
Thank you. We need to share.
Great job.
Thank you.
So, very short story.